climate disaster created the Vikings. In 793 AD, 2 million Norse souls starved on land meant for 1 million. Desperation turned farmers into warlords, climate refugees, who built a terror empire that dominated Europe for 300 years. And here's what should scare you. The same forces are rising again. Here's what they won't tell you. The Vikings weren't just raiders. They were forged in famine and fire, then unleashed as Europe's deadliest profit machine. By the end of this video, you'll discover the climate death trap that turned farmers into killers, the surgical raid of Lindisfarne that made Europe fear its shadow, and the dark machine, a violence economy that made terror more valuable than gold. Every pattern is repeating today. Here's the truth buried in frozen graveyards across Scandinavia. The Viking Age wasn't born from bloodlust. It was forged in the agony of parents watching their children starve, the bitter taste of ash in every empty skillet. While the rest of Europe basked in medieval warmth, Scandinavia became nature's killing field. The fjords, so central to Norse identity, acted like giant cold traps. A 2-degree drop around 750 AD meant frost returned in May, cold air sank, mountains sealed it in, and winter stretched 4 months longer than anywhere else. Fields froze, livestock died in ice graves. The land had turned hostile. And this wasn't just survival. It was the birth of an industrial hunger machine. By 775, 2 million Norse souls were crammed onto land fit for 1 million. Pollen records show crop yields collapsed 60% in 2 decades. Mass graves reveal malnourished children whose bones never fully formed. This wasn't decline. It was collapse. Picture Einar's trembling hands. His daughter's eyes are hollow. She no longer cries. His wife hasn't spoken in days. Last week, the Ericssons froze to death outside their door. The Bjornsons boiled their boots and still perished. The choice isn't right or wrong. It's survival, or become the monster who drags your bloodline through hell. Now hold on, because it gets worse. When survival becomes zero-sum, farmers become killers. The climate didn't just shift the seasons, it rewrote human nature. If these buried truths are blowing your mind, subscribe now, because the Lindisfarne raid you're about to see will shatter everything you thought you knew about Viking strategy. YouTube favors deep dives, but only if you stay engaged. So, hit that button and let's keep going. June 8th, 793 AD. Fire lit the horizon, and everything changed. What followed defied belief. Remember this date, because in the next 90 seconds, you'll witness the birth of industrial psychological warfare. The monks at Lindisfarne believed they were untouchable. They were fatally wrong. Picture Brother Higbald at dawn, candlelight dancing across his manuscript. The North Sea lay calm, predictable, safe. What he didn't know, Viking scouts had spent months mapping every routine, every weakness, every vault. Higbald was about to witness a masterclass in psychological warfare. Your history books call it savagery, but this was surgical precision. No garrison, no walls, no weapons, just treasure chambers filled with gold, silver, and centuries of irreplaceable knowledge, defended by men who had sworn never to lift a sword. Imagine a bank with no guards, no locks, only a sign reading, "Please don't rob us, we're holy." The Vikings found the softest target in Europe, and then weaponized its survivors. At dawn, June 8, 793 AD, longships slipped from the mist like specters of death. No war cries, only steel drawn and boots whispering on sacred stone. Brother Higbald wrote, "They came as wolves among sheep." The altar ran red. But this wasn't madness. It was calculated terror. Every scream engineered, every death strategically deployed. No mercy, no mistakes. The real weapon wasn't their axes. It was fear, spread by the few they allowed to live. Within weeks, from Scotland to Francia, every abbey whispered Lindisfarne's fate. Walls rose overnight. Coastal towns emptied. Trade routes collapsed. But Lindisfarne was just the prototype. The real terror engine was still being assembled. What came next would reshape Europe. The Dark Machine, history's first profit-driven empire of fear. This wasn't conquest. It was the birth of history's first industrial terror machine, a furnace of fear that once lit, devoured everything in its path. By 850 AD, more Norse youth picked up axes than hoes. The Vikings had spun a war economy that demanded constant expansion. Each raid returned 3 dividends: plunder, weapons, and fresh warriors. Neighboring farmers saw the silver and the slaves. Why risk a hungry plow? But here's the trap. Success became dependency. Chieftains couldn't quit raiding. Their entire social order hinged on stolen wealth. They had built an addiction to violence, and the machine fed on itself. Here's the terrifying part. They turned human suffering into a business model, one that generated billions in today's terms. By 900 AD, the Viking slave trade alone hauled in the equivalent of $2 billion a year. But slaves weren't just profit. They were psychological weapons. The masterstroke? They left survivors, on purpose. Broken witnesses carried tales of brutality to every market, monastery, and coastal town. Fear became their most valuable export. Monasteries capitulated. Towns paid tribute, always cheaper than swords. The Vikings didn't just spread terror, they branded it. Every victim became a marketing agent for their empire of fear. And the machine demanded more. Each generation struck farther, embraced greater risks. What began as fjord-born survival became a continental conquest engine. They became the CEOs of Europe's first multinational terror franchise, stretching from Iceland to Constantinople, and eventually, the machine outgrew its masters. Here's what should terrify you. This pattern is alive today. Climate refugees, resource wars, human trafficking networks pulling in billions. More people are enslaved today than ever before. The dark machine never died. It just swapped axes for boardroom suits. Here's the truth they're still hiding. The Viking Age was just a trailer for humanity's next act. Climate collapse, mass displacement, battles over survival, broken institutions. It's all replaying the Norse nightmare on a global stage. The dark machine isn't buried in medieval graves. It's rising again, in refugee camps, failed states, and climate disaster zones. If today's hidden history opened your eyes, subscribe and hit the bell. Because next week, I'm exposing 7 medieval weapons so brutal, entire kingdoms banned them on sight. What I found in the Vatican archives will change everything you thought you knew about medieval warfare. The question isn't if history will repeat, it's whether you'll be ready when it does.